The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the VA hospital's crowded waiting room, casting a sterile glow on rows of worn-out faces. In the corner sat a man no one noticed at first, faded camouflage jacket 2 sizes too big, boots scuffed beyond repair, a cardboard sign leaning against his knee that read, "Homeless Vet. Anything helps." His eyes, though, were sharp, scanning the room like he was still on patrol. Then the double doors swung open, and in strode Colonel Harlan Reyes, medals gleaming on his chest, voice booming as he greeted the staff. The colonel was there to give a speech, boost morale, shake hands. But when his gaze landed on the man in the corner, something shifted. The colonel froze mid-step, his polished boots squeaking on the linoleum. "Hawk 8, he whispered, barely audible over the hum of the air conditioning. The man looked up slowly, and the entire room went dead silent. If you've ever felt the air sucked out of a moment, this was it. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss what happens next, because this story is about to unravel everything you thought you knew about sacrifice, betrayal, and redemption. Colonel Reyes took one hesitant step forward, then another, until he was standing over the man like a ghost from a war neither of them had fully left behind. "Jackson? Staff Sergeant Marcus Jackson." The homeless vet's jaw tightened, and he gave the smallest nod, the kind that carried a lifetime of pain. The colonel's voice cracked. "My God, it is you." Nurses stopped charting. Veterans in wheelchairs leaned forward. Even the janitor paused with his mop dripping on the floor. Because everyone in that room knew the legend of Hawk 8. Whispers from Afghanistan, stories passed like contraband cigarettes in the barracks. The call sign that belonged to a soldier who single-handedly saved an entire platoon, the man who flew into hell with nothing but a Black Hawk and a death wish. But no one had seen him in over a decade, and now here. He was, broken, forgotten, holding a cardboard sign. The colonel actually knelt, right there on the grimy floor, his dress blues brushing against spilled coffee. "Stand up, son," he said, voice thick. Marcus didn't move. I said, "Stand up." This time it was an order, the kind that once sent men charging into fire. Marcus rose slowly, joints popping, pride flickering in his eyes like a dying ember. The colonel turned to the room, his chest heaving. "This man," he announced, "is the reason half of you are breathing today." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A young nurse dropped her clipboard. But Marcus just stared at the floor, like the weight of the words might crush him if he looked up. The colonel demanded answers. Not in the waiting room, privacy mattered. He marched Marcus down the hall to a small conference room, the kind with fake wood paneling and a flickering projector. The door slammed shut, but the story was already leaking out into the corridors. Orderlies texted friends. Veterans called brothers who'd served. By the time the colonel locked the door, the entire hospital was buzzing. Inside, Reyes paced like a caged animal. "What the hell happened to you, Jackson? You were a goddamn hero. Medals, citations. The president shook your hand." Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his voice gravel and smoke. "President shook a lot of hands that day, sir. Didn't stop the bank from taking my house." The colonel stopped pacing. "Talk to me." And Marcus did. For the first time in years, the words poured out like blood from an old wound. He told the colonel about the mission in Kandahar. The night Hawk 8 became legend. How his Black Hawk was hit by an RPG, rotors screaming as they spiraled toward a Taliban stronghold. How he auto-rotated into a hot LZ, guns blazing, pulling 12 wounded Rangers out of a kill zone while tracer rounds stitched the sky. How he flew that bird with one hand on the cyclic and the other pressing gauze into his co-pilot's gut. How the bird crashed on exfil, but every soul on board walked away because Marcus refused to leave anyone behind. The colonel listened, face pale, remembering the after-action report he'd signed off on himself. But the story didn't end with the medals. Marcus kept talking, voice dropping lower with every sentence. After the war, the nightmares came. The VA wait lists, the pills that didn't work, the wife who couldn't take the screaming anymore, who packed up the kids and left while he was at a doctor's appointment that never happened. The foreclosure notice tacked to the door of the house he'd bought with hazard pay. The odd jobs that dried up when employers saw the scars, the twitch in his left eye. the night he slept in his truck until the repo man took that too. And finally, the cardboard sign. "Hawk 8, he said with a bitter laugh. "Turns out the sky doesn't care if you're a hero when you're back on the ground." The colonel's fists clenched so hard his knuckles went white. "This is wrong," he growled. "This is goddamn wrong." He pulled out his phone, started making calls, generals, senators, anyone who owed him a favor. But Marcus just shook his head. "Don't, sir. I didn't tell you this for pity." The colonel's eyes blazed. "Then why?" Marcus met his gaze, and for the first time, the broken man looked like the warrior again. "Because someone needs to remember what we promised each other. No man left behind. You taught me that." The tension in that room was thicker than Kabul dust. The colonel wanted to fix it, throw money, pull strings, make it right. But Marcus wasn't asking for a handout. He was asking for something bigger, accountability, the truth about what happens when the cameras stop rolling and the welcome home parades end. The colonel argued. Marcus pushed back, voices rose, and then the door burst open. A young captain, barely 30, stood there, panting. "Sir, you need to see this." He held up a tablet. On the screen, a live feed from the waiting room. Someone had recorded the reunion, posted it online. The video was exploding, millions of views in minutes. #Hawk8 was trending nationwide. Veterans were sharing stories. Civilians were crying in their cars. The internet had found its hero, and it wasn't letting go. The colonel stared at the screen, then at Marcus. "You didn't plan this." Marcus shrugged. "Didn't have to. Truth's got a way of flying on its own." The colonel laughed, a sound that turned into something close to a sob. He grabbed Marcus by the shoulders. "You're coming with me." Marcus resisted. "Where?" The colonel's grin was feral. "To make them remember." What happened next unfolded like a movie scripted by fate and fury. The colonel dragged Marcus to the hospital auditorium where his morale speech was supposed to happen. But instead of platitudes, he put Marcus on stage. No warning, no script, just a microphone and a room full of veterans, nurses, and now a live streaming camera crew that had shown up after the viral video. The colonel stepped back. "Tell them," he said simply. Marcus froze under the lights, the weight of 1,000 eyes pinning him in place. Then he spoke, not with anger, but with the quiet power of a man who'd stared down death and found it wanting. He told the story again, but this time to the world. Every detail. The crash, the rescue, the fall, the silence from a country that moved on. Cameras zoomed in on his scarred hands as he described holding his daughter's teddy bear the night she left with her mother. He didn't ask for anything. He just wanted them to see, and they did. The chat exploded. Donations poured in, not pity, but respect. A GoFundMe hit $1 million in an hour. A contractor in Texas offered a job. A veteran in Ohio sent a truck. But the real twist came from an unexpected place. A woman in the back row stood up, tears streaming down her face. She was older now, hair gray at the temples, but Marcus knew her instantly. Captain Sarah Klein, his co-pilot. The one he'd saved. The one whose gut he'd held together with his bare hands. She'd been listed as Kia in the chaos of the crash, her dog tags lost in the wreckage. But she'd survived, captured, escaped, spent years in hiding, piecing her life back together under a new name. The military had buried her file to avoid a PR disaster. She'd seen the video, recognized the call sign, driven through the night to get there. The reunion was chaos. Sobs, screams, cameras flashing. The colonel watched, stunned, as the two heroes embraced like the war had ended yesterday. But the story wasn't over. Because Sarah had proof, documents, photos, a flash drive hidden in her boot for a decade, evidence that the crash wasn't just bad luck, it was sabotage, a corrupt contractor cutting corners on rotor maintenance, bribing officers to sign off on faulty birds. Marcus's mission had been a suicide run from the start, a cover-up waiting to happen. The colonel's face went from shock to rage in a heartbeat. He seized the drive, called in every favor, every contact. Within hours, federal agents were involved. News helicopters circled the hospital. The contractor's stock plummeted. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves. Marcus didn't care about revenge. He cared about the others. The ones who never made it home, the families still waiting for answers. The colonel stood beside him as the truth unfolded on national television. Investigations, arrests, a congressional hearing where Marcus testified, voice steady, Sarah at his side. The cardboard sign was gone, replaced by a nation that finally saw him. But the real moment, the one that broke the internet, came during the hearing's final day. A general, red-faced and sweating, tried to discredit Marcus, claiming Hawk 8 was exaggerated propaganda. The room tensed. Then Sarah stood, held up a photo, Marcus carrying her through the fire, blood-soaked, half his face burned away. The general went silent. The camera zoomed in on Marcus's eyes, unbroken, unbowed. The clip got 50 million views in a day. In the end, justice wasn't clean. The contractor's CEO took a plea deal. Politicians issued apologies that rang hollow, but Marcus got something better. A home, paid for by strangers who'd watched his story. A job training pilots, passing on the lessons no medal could teach. A reunion with his daughter, now 16, who saw her father not as the man who scared her with nightmares, but as the hero who saved a nation's soul. The colonel retired early, started a foundation in Marcus's name, no vet left behind. Sarah became its voice, traveling the country, making sure no one else held a cardboard sign. The last scene played out quietly months later on a crisp fall morning. Marcus stood on a porch in Tennessee, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. Sarah pulled up in a beat-up Jeep, grinning like the war was just a bad dream. The colonel was there too, older now, medals traded for a fishing hat. They didn't talk about the past, they talked about the future. Kids, grandkids, the kind of life war tried to steal. Marcus looked at the sky, where a hawk circled high above. Hawk 8, he whispered, not as a call sign, but as a promise. The bird screeched once, then soared out of sight. And that's the story of the day a broken veteran said his call sign and the whole world stopped to listen. From a VA waiting room to the halls of Congress, one man's truth became a movement. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, from which part of the country are you watching this video?